Hello, let's review how to get financial statement data in Excel and do a real life example of how we might use data to make trading decisions. What you will learn is how to build this buy and sell signal chart on Google stock using the price to sales ratio as a trigger. This approach did a nice job signaling Google was trading at a discount during 2022 and 2023 while trading at $100 per share. It also said buy in summer 2025 when Google was trading downward because of AI, LLM, and DOJ negative sentiment at 150 per share. Google is now trading at 309. This chart is made possible with data, and we need a good amount of it. In this tab, we have the Google income statement, the Google balance sheet, and the Google stock price. Let's start with a brand new Excel sheet. And what I am going to do is rely on the YouDomo API. And YouDomo provides us data of financial statements for your favorite stocks. I have the Pro version, and I have my API key here. And don't worry, by the time I publish the video, I'm going to regenerate my keys, so I don't need to worry about that too much in this video. But when you create an account with YouDomo, we will provide you automatically your API key and secret. When you first log in, the secret will be there. So now that you have an account at YouDomo, we can then go to the Data tab and select Get Data. And I'm going to select From the Web. With this, we can type in our request URL. So you might be wondering, what might that URL look like? We can go to the Documentations tab, and we'll see that the base URL is HTTPS YouDomo API Live on Render API Statements. These are the parameters you will pass through to have a successful request. So let's look at an example. An example request is this URL, and I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it into the request. And I think for now, 2022 is good. I'm going to change this to 2026. And even better, you can make the end date way out into the future so that you can automate this API request. Whenever new quarter releases, new earning releases comes out, we'll grab that data into the YouDomo API warehouse, and when you refresh your Excel, you'll also get that data. So here I have my API key and API secret. So I'm going to substitute that with my own key. And then it's going to also ask for your API secret. And these API keys are your credentials access. So I'm going to type that in there, and then I'm going to click OK. And here we see a JSON document. Each record houses the line item and the value of that line item and where it came from. So it looks like we successfully got the data. Now, to us, this is not helpful. Instead, we'd rather see this as a table. And I'm going to keep the default. And then we're going to expand these records so that we can actually see them. And finally, we have the data that we're after. So here we have the ticker, which is Apple. And actually, I am going to want to change that. So let's go back to source. Let's update the default from Apple to Google. I'm going to click OK. And then Excel's Power Query already saved our applied steps, so we can just jump back to where we were. I'm going to change the date types to their proper format. I'm going to change load timestamps as a date type. And I messed that up, so I'm going to restart. Date time, filing date, same thing, date time, and date is date. Okay, so I'm going to call this Google's income, and I'm going to close and load. And then we're going to see a query returning our data. This is actually annual. For this example, I'm going to also want quarterly data. So I'm going to switch from annual to quarterly. So I'm going to edit this again. And I'm going to go into the URL and change this statement from no and is quarterly to yes. And this is now, instead of annual data, is going to give us quarterly data. So now you could see September, and then it goes to 6/30, March 31st. So now we have quarterly data, so that looks good. We've refreshed the data, and now it's quarterly, March, June, September, March, June, September. Okay. Now we also want to get the Google stock price. So why don't we get Google price? And I'm going to use the built-in Excel function to do this. So let's say stock start date, end date, and I'm going to do a value holder there. We started the income data at 2022, so we'll do the same thing for that. And then we'll do 2026 as the end date. Here we can say stock history. We want Google stock, the start date that we just entered, and the end date. We can pass that. And then this is daily data. And we can even make sure by passing in an interval 0 value, which is daily. And then whether or not we want headers, yes, show headers. And properties, I want dates, and I want the closed value. So we could pass that again, and this is what we get. So perfect. And if we wanted to, we could plot this just to see what it looks like, and that looks about right. So now we have Google stock price within our Excel sheet. So now I want to do a price to sales ratio on Google to calculate the value of Google on a price to sales perspective based on Google's revenue. So how can I connect this table with this table? The one field that this table and our price table has in common is the date field. So I'm going to make a new column called stock price. And we can use the XLOOKUP function. So we have XLOOKUP. What value are we looking up? We're looking up the date value, which is in C2. I'm going to pass this as the integer value. And now there's the lookup array, which is in this field. And just to make it future proof, I'm going to perform it on the entire row. Same thing with the Google price. If it's not found, I'll just say not found. I want the exact match. And here we go. So now we have the stock price. But check this out. Not found. Interesting. So why might we miss out on this share price? So this issue is because the date 6/30 doesn't exist in the historic stock price data. So if I were to try and find 6/30/2024, it's not going to exist. So 6 is June, and there you go. June ended 28th, so that was probably the last trading day. Therefore, 30th day is not included. So how might we get around that? What we can do is finding the most recent workday to connect the two tables to. So I'm going to copy this Excel lookup. So here, what does this do? So this enables us to say, hey, look for the end of month date of C2, which is our date. Go to Google date, Google price, return the Google's price, and do the same thing. If we don't find it the first time, we're going to offset it by another different number of days, etc. And then let's try that. Let me try and copy paste that again. Okay, here you go. So let's try that. So once upon a time ago, it said not found. Looks pretty good. We were able to find the data. Perfect. So now we were successfully able to find all the stock prices for each day, a date in the quarter release came out. So that's great. So now, how can we make this data table useful for us? How can we turn this data table into some actionable insight? What we're going to do now is create a pivot table. So I'm going to copy this entire table. I'm going to say, let's create a pivot table on sheet 2. And I want all of our line items. So let's drop that into our rows. I'm also going to want columns as a date. And I'm going to remove year, quarter, month. I just want the date. So here you go. Next, let's put the value in there, and let's make this a bit easier to read. So instead of just a number, let's add some commas in there. Okay, perfect. Okay, so perfect. We have all our line items from Google's income statement, but I don't really need all of them. I really just need revenue. So let's filter out that. Let's make it super easy for us to read. And I'm now also going to want our price. So let's actually make another pivot on an existing sheet, which is sheet 2. And I'm going to do the same thing, except I wonder if it's going to let me. Actually, I don't think so, because maybe we could remove year, remove quarter, and remove month. Sum of stock price. Here you go. Perfect. Okay. So now we have revenue, which is in millions that Google has generated, and we have the stock price for each day of each quarter, end of quarter. So now we can calculate the market cap of Google and the price to sales multiple of Google to then figure out if Google's trading at a discount or not. If Google's trading at a discount, we should buy. If Google's trading at a premium, we should hold or sell. So now let's start by calculating the stock price, which we have right here. And then we should do shares outstanding. Now, we don't have shares outstanding in the income statement. In the Google's balance sheet, the balance sheet does have shares issued and outstanding, but that is not the complete story. So we should instead take Google's current shares outstanding, and if we look that up, Google's shares outstanding is about 12 billion shares. So let's hold that constant. So let's hold that constant throughout, and that'll be the value we use in this analysis. So 12 billion shares outstanding. Now that we have the stock price throughout time and we have the shares outstanding, we can calculate the market cap. And we have B8. Okay, here you go. So, we could double check. 2.7 in September, and Google now is at 3.7 trillion, but remember, Google's now at 309. In September, Google was at 250. So, ballpark, I'd say 2.7 sounds about correct. So, I'm content with that number. And then we already have revenue at the top, but I'm going to standardize it because the Google statements are in millions. So I'm going to say B3 times 1 million. That turns out to 68 billion. So I could drag that across. And there you go. Now that we have revenue and that we have market cap, we can now calculate the price to sales, which is market cap divided by sales or revenue. And here we get 23.6. I could drag that across, and that's going to give me 27 for the most recent September quarter release. And then we could calculate the average price to sales so that we can see where did Google trade at a revenue perspective relative to itself, historic self. So we can say average, drag that across. And we see on average, Google has traded at a price to sales of 21.4 in the past. Trying to figure out how many quarters that is. 11 quarters. Okay. So now that we know that, we can create a logic, a simple logic. We can create a sell signal row and a buy signal row. And what we're going to do is say, hey, if Google is trading at a premium compared to its historic price to sales, we're going to either hold or sell. So if I say if this value is less than this value, then I'm going to say sell. And if else, I'm going to say null or nan. I'm going to drag that across. And then we're going to do the opposite for this one. The logic here is if the average is greater than the quarterly price to sales, we're going to say buy, else null, and we're going to drag that across. And then we could do some conditional formatting to make it a bit more legible and pop out. So if I say buy, I want it to be green. I want it to be a good indicator. Same thing for sell. I want it to be a bad indicator. I want it to be red and spooky and scary and bold. So there you go. Cool. So now we have buy and sell signals. Thanks to the data that we can get from the YouDomo API, no need for a fancy script, no need to web scrape a huge amount of data on websites, no need for any of that. You can just copy and paste the link into query in Excel, grab the data from our API service, and then you get the data. So next, we would want to make a nice little chart so that we know as traders what we might want to do. So I'm actually going to make another field or another row. And I just want to get the date so that I could make plotting a bit easier. I'm going to drag this down one just to make it easier to read. Okay, so let's get the date. And let's also get the stock price, which is here. Let's do that. And then we can create a new plot. And it's not going to like that. Probably because one is a pivot and one is... what if we just did this? Let's do another chart. Nope, it does not like that. All right. That's fine. We can create a new row and say stock price and say B8. And we'll drag that across. There you go. Now we can create a nice chart. Not only do I want the stock prices, but I also want to know what to do at those prices. So I'm going to also highlight the sell and buy signals. I'll choose that one for now. Okay, so far this looks pretty good. I'm going to actually change the chart type. I want a combo. I want the stock price as a line. And then I actually want the signals to be a scatter plot. So I'm going to say yes to that. And there you go. I'm going to declutter this chart. We don't need two dates. We don't need this secondary axis. This one's helpful, though. We would want to keep that. So let's label this as Google stock price. Okay. So based on Google's historic price to sales and quarterly price to sales multiple, we now have created actionable signals that us traders can take based on this valuation. So this model has done a great job flagging Google as a buying opportunity back in 2022 and 2023. We also see a great buy signal during the summer of 2025. This was a great time to buy. This is June, July. The lowest of the lows was in April, May, when Apple released and said, hey, Google search and Safari is down. The entire sentiment of the stock market was that, hey, Google's going to be the next eBay. It's like Kodak all over again. You know, Google search is going to be suspended because of AI and LLM search. Lots of negative talk about Google was circulating at the time. However, we can, go to YouDomo Atlas, and let's look at Google. Let's look at how Google has been crushing it in terms of generating revenue in the past couple of years. You see this blue line, revenue in 2020 was at 182, and that's about the time ChatGPT first came out. ChatGPT was coming out of the woodworks back in 2020 and 2021, 2022. But the revenue kept coming in for Google. And we could see that on a quarterly basis as well. A very nice straight line for Google in terms of revenue, while keeping costs and revenues relatively low. We're still also seeing Google ramp up their expenses here, as we did see Google start to spend a lot more in their AI infrastructure. And it's paying off. Gemini is starting to take the lead in downloads. Gemini is starting to get some recognition. So from a statement standpoint and a price to sales standpoint, these were good times to buy Google. The overreaction was overdone in the market. And thanks to this visual and this data in our new Excel, we can see that firsthand. We can also add a final chart of the price and sales to the bottom of our chart to complete the view. And there you go. This is the chart that we had at the very beginning of the video. And now you could clearly see, hey, when the price to sales is lower than the average, we throw up a buy signal. When it's above, we throw up a sell signal. So I hope you enjoyed this analysis and this walkthrough, how you can leverage the data that you get in the YouDomo API for your fundamental analysis benefits. With the YouDomo API, you get access to balance sheets, income statements, cash flows for over 3,500 stocks in the US. So check out youdomo.com. It comes with API and Atlas access, and signing up is free. No credit card required to sign up. So I hope to see you there. Thanks for enjoying the video, watching it with me, and I hope you found this use case very helpful. I'll see you all in the next one.